Okay, I'd like to welcome you all this evening to the first time that we have held the Global Social Good Summit here in Cork. Summits like this, as I say, are being held all over the world. We're linking into the United Nations, we're linking into a global message that's happening. I'm not going to keep you very long, I'm just going to do a very short intro. I just want to say thank you very much for giving up your evening and coming along here tonight. And when I was doing some research for tonight, I just looked at what some of the quotes that came from the summit already, and there were two that really struck me. And one was that we're fed about hearing the news, we want to make something different happen. And somebody else said, you know, sometimes a supportive tweet is all it needs to cheer somebody up. And I know Greg Canty is here, and I've seen Greg quite a lot on Twitter, where somebody's having a bad day, somebody in small and medium-sized enterprise is having a bad day and says, oh, I had no sales today. And somebody says, cheer up, it'll be okay again tomorrow. And you can almost hear the virtual hug that goes out there. So what we'd like to do tonight is start a conversation within this area, start a dialogue. It's not about the technology, it's about the reaching out, it's about the connection, it's always about the human. We've got 7 speakers here for you tonight that come from different areas of life, and they've all come from different perspectives, different experience, different goals, but we all have the same vision. We just want to make things better. So with that, I'll stop talking and introduce our first speaker, who is Jacqueline St. Jack, the artist who developed the chair that we have here.
Hello, good evening. So my name is Tiffany Scognamiglio, most known as Jacqueline St. Jacques is my artistic name. I lived and worked in Cork for 8 months. The Camden Palace Hotel has invited me in residence for 1 year. They offered me a space to work and create a different art piece for my future solo exhibition. My principal line of work is city life and urban challenges. I have a master's degree in urban and social anthropology, and I've worked in Paris as a research manager for local participatory democracy. Then I developed my own activity, which aims to generate debates about global and local issues, proposing a creative perspective on it. In relation to the exhibition I'm preparing, I've created this sculpture, and its name is The Story of an Old Bench. So I've used the bench as a symbol of the public space and the social life. This public bench is almost completely covered by printed board and cables, which are the symbol of new technologies and social networks. Our society, our relations to the others, happen through internet, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We can observe a real transfer from a local social life, which happened in the public space, to a virtual way of communicating and creating relations. So we have a transfer from the public space to the private space, our room, our computer, our networks. So the public bench, because it's public, can drive you to meet every type of persons. You can control your social interactions. With networks, you can focus on a specific target or interlocutor. Story of an Old Bench is an invitation to talk about those transfers, which are actually a big revolution for social life. And who says revolution says opportunity, but also possible chaos. And we have to ask what we want to do with those new possibilities of communicating has to be discussed, and the drift needs to be discussed too. Story of an Old Bench is a warning about public space which are forgotten. Their function in a city is important. They are the places that we share. And sadly, they are becoming a space that scares people. The lack of activities, culture, events in the public space slowly feeds distrust within a city. I think new technology and social networks have a real strong power in terms of social innovation. And what we need is education and to associate all types of person and social classes into it. New technologies and social networks offers a wonderful opportunity to improve our society, but I think that it's important to not use them as a substitute to a physically real social life, and not forgetting that public spaces are also a wonderful space of creativity, of sharing, and one of the answers to a lot of urban challenges and social cohesion. To conclude, please accept to listen my last word about my artwork. It's a kind of poem, but not exactly. I remember an old bench where I met my friends at night. I remember an old bench where I brought my lovers. I remember an old bench where I scared pigeons. I remember an old bench where I read my newspaper. I remember an old bench where I sunbathed. I remember an old bench where the polite vagrant slept. This bench, we've had bars on it to make individual places. This bench, we took it away from public space to avoid gatherings. This bench gave into internet, TV, mobile phones and networks. So there we go, old bench, you've had your time. Lovers don't kiss anymore on public benches, as George Bassent's poets sang. They tag POC, like goodbye old bench. Thank you for listening. If you accept, Kilian from Camden Palace, I would like just to introduce really shortly the structure in a few words, so thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Killian O'Dwyer from Camden Palace Hotel. I represent Camden Palace, but not only do I represent Camden Palace, I represent artists like Tiffany. For us, we're a really small non-profit organisation, we're non-funded, and my goal really is to help the artists and to help events like this happen for the artists. And for Tiffany, the one thing that I've learned from her is about this education and communication. And it's something that, you know, we working through with the artists in trying to get a more social inclusion across Europe has been one of our main tasks. We're lucky that we have the ability to include other European artists. Funds are difficult, but it's rejoicing at this inclusion of work. And mainly here, I'd just like to congratulate Tiffany for her great piece, and I hope you all go and see her fantastic show. So, thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Dr. Rita Kenny. Awesome.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, Jane, for having me here. I'm delighted to be here. I just picked up on two things from Tiffany or Jacqueline's talk that I'm going to kind of take a different slant on, the whole area of networks and the whole area of education. And I've just thrown three ideas together, and I'm coming up with more questions and areas for debate as opposed to solutions.
Technology is leaving.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, just as an introduction, I was going to start off with networks. I spent my PhD, my doctoral studies, looking at networks and looking at, in particular, networking capability and how high-tech companies, how this networking capability impacted on their export performance. Now, I don't have the time nor the energy to go into all of this, the PhD work tonight, so just a quick overview, and then I'm going to, hopefully this will make sense in a minute or two. I looked at different elements of networking capability. Now, not all of them. Okay, I looked at a direct link for a networking capability and export performance, and I'm just going to skip through to the main findings on this. The main findings, and again, this is not just unique to my own research, but you'll find this in a huge stream of research from the Industrial Marketing Purchasing Group and a number of different researchers. networks can hinder and help. Okay, so they can both be beneficial, and they can actually constrict you and constrain you. Some of the issues that were relevant in this research was the human capital, strong ties and coordination. So looking at the strong ties, what I meant were structural relationships, strong contractual ties between companies, coordination, the ability to coordinate those networks, and then the human capital, the skills and the knowledge and the expertise to make it happen. Not all networks are beneficial, as I said, but there's a happy medium. And again, the reason I want to get on to education and the link to entrepreneurs is my new role in CIT as the head of the Hinks Centre for Entrepreneurship Education. We're looking at the whole area of entrepreneurship, but from the view of entrepreneurship support. So we're looking at the lecturers, we're looking at the trainers, we're looking at the support agencies and seeing what do they need in order to help our entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are time constrained. And again, anyone who's in the room, and I suppose my other hat is I co-founded a tech business with my husband, so I know what it's like. I have walked the walk. We've done that side of things. So I know firsthand how time constrained and resource constrained small businesses are. So again, if we're trying to promote and support those people who support those entrepreneurs, what are the skills that are lacking? And again, that's where technology comes into it. The big so what again? So what about that? I picked up a piece of research this week, and it says that Irish businesses are not exploiting digital technologies for generating new revenues. And again, there's a piece of work done by Accenture, and it was published last week in the mainstream media. I'm going to take a different twist on this. Okay, I'm going to look at kind of our Irish companies, entrepreneurs using digital tools to generate support. And what I mean by support, are they using it to generate startup capital? Are they using it to generate capital for growth? Are they using it to generate interest in maybe an exit, okay, trade sale or an IPO if they've grown that big, like the likes of Hugh O'Donnell in Kent's a couple of years ago? So I'm just taking a different twist on some of where the research is going on this. Okay. And I suppose just to kind of synthesize some of what we do know. I mentioned that networks can help and hinder. When I mean networks, you mentioned relations, you mentioned kind of kissing on the bench. And again, kind of probably not far, or maybe yes, a far cry from kissing on the bench. Going into partnership, going into kind of joint ventures, strategic alliances to actually make an entry into a foreign market. I mean, that's the kind of kissing on the bench stuff that I was actually dealing with. Probably not as interesting as some of the stuff that Jacqueline has explored earlier on. But again, relationships, people. Networks, and again we're talking about the tools for making that happen. The choice of network is important. Okay, it's not all about networking. It's not all about kind of kicking tires, as somebody described it to me at one event. You have limited resources and limited time, so you need to be strategic in who you network with. And again, no surprise from the literature, the entrepreneurs have different needs. They have different needs at their different stages, whether it's startup, whether it's growth, whether it's exit, at different stages you'll have different needs. And the people, the networks, the support agencies that help you at different stages will be different. Okay, when you're looking for kind of an incubation centre, hopefully you'll kind of think of the Rubicon Centre. If you're looking for a trade sale and exit, there's probably a different support agency, a support network out there that will help you. So again, that is a huge maze for organisations to find out what's relevant to them, what's relevant to them at their different stage. Are you a female entrepreneur? What supports are there for you? If you are you in internationally traded services? Where do you go to? So I'm trying to kind of explore the gap there that maybe, and again, I suppose the digital marketing and digital technologies are beginning to address. And again, I know Siobhan Finn in a few minutes will talk about and attest to what Cork Innovates is doing. And again, it's a step certainly in the right direction, and it's a step that's certainly needed to try and bridge that gap. Okay, I've talked about this, so I'll move on. Okay, I just scanned through some of the headlines. Again, trying to come up with some research for tonight. These are some of the headlines, and the first one that struck me was free event for tech startups, where you had 19 state agencies exhibiting. Now, if you're a startup going along to an exhibition with 19, I mean, some of them are government departments, the Patent Office, Department of kind of Foreign Affairs and Labour Relations and so on for visas, that's an awful lot of information to take in. That's an awful lot of information and departments to navigate through at one event. but what's the next step? And I suppose that's where we're coming into, and where we begin to see some things happening. On the entrepreneur side, okay, there seems to be a lot of support there for the entrepreneurs, and there seems to be things happening with the Digital Skills Academy, accredited by our friends in Dublin Institute of Technology. We see things happening. I looked in the UK. We see things happening in the UK with digital technology and opening up opportunities there. New Zealand, startup boot camp returns from the New Zealand Herald this week. Where are the boot camps for us? Where are the boot camps for us as entrepreneurship educators? Where are the boot camps for us and for our colleagues who are supporting entrepreneurs in the County Enterprise Board offices and in the Enterprise Ireland offices? Is there a divide there? And again, I know there are, I mentioned Cork Innovates, you see Ron Immink doing a lot of work through the Small Business Can and Ulster Bank using the social media. Jane, you mentioned kind of tweets with Greg Canty and that support for entrepreneurs. Who is giving the support? Is it other entrepreneurs, or is it the people whose mission it is to support the entrepreneurs? And is there a gap there? And I'm throwing that out there, I'm throwing it out there because I seem to think that there is, and it's not, as I said, it's not what people are not doing, it's just that maybe they're targeting the wrong people. And I said, where are the boot camps for the poor entrepreneurship educators? Where are the poor boot camps for those people who are, as I said, supposed to be in this space, helping companies where they actually need help? So I think I've actually said that as well, so I'm kind of keeping ahead of myself. But we need, I suppose, coming back to the networks, coming back to the kissing on the bench bit, it's all about people. And again, it's using the tools, and again, looking at, if we are looking for boot camps or kind of training in that regard, we need training maybe to kind of see where the balance and what are the effective tools. It's like what we said about the entrepreneurs using the appropriate networks at the appropriate stages for whatever support that they need. What are the appropriate tools to use, depending whether and who are they communicating with? And also remember that there's a person at the end of the keypad, or at the end of the mouse pad, or the end of the touch screen, and so on. And I'm just finishing off with a little cartoon. I tried to find something a little bit funny to finish off with, but I couldn't find an entrepreneur. I had to find a kid to portray this. And again, it's a little bit like the end of Jacqueline's kind of poem, where it starts with you're being prodded and you're being poked and so on. It's kind of, I could read your blog, but I'd rather you told me how your day was, and kind of parents having a conversation. And so the same thing is actually having that balance between having the tools, using the appropriate tools, but also building the relationships, okay, keeping the person at the end of the keypad in mind. And again, maybe it's the way we're going, but there's at least two people here that I've communicated with regularly over email, and I got to meet him face to face tonight. So I think, well done, and this alone is worth happening. It's worth kind of networking in that sense, so that we actually do start building those relationships face to face, because that's where it matters. Yes, you can pick up the Twitter machine afterwards and so on, but having it a good balance. So that's where I'm going to finish. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jane.
Yes, please. Good, sir.
Good evening, my name's Andy O'Donoghue, and for a living I get to talk about technology to a lot of people. And I work with a lot of companies who ask me about technology and how it works and what they should do next. And so I get to talk about the future of technology a lot, which is an interesting job, but one that sometimes frustrates you. I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Robin Dunbar, who's a famous anthropologist, and he came up with a number a few years ago called Dunbar's number. The premise of the idea is, how many people would you feel comfortable rekindling a relationship with if you met them late one night in the transit lounge of Hong Kong Airport? It's a difficult scene to picture. And the idea of Dunbar's number was, he was defining really about how many Facebook friends you can have and how many you shouldn't have. And the whole principle around this gave way to all this thinking in technology about, well, and he said the most fabulous thing when he presented it, the very first time I heard him present it. He said, we only have so much capital. We only have so much social capital. And it's an idea that's spread throughout the technology world, and so great thinkers in technology are now saying, well, you know, this whole movement for social media, as good as it is and as useful as it is, and let's be honest, companies look at how they can sell using social media. If you want to change a world or change an attitude or develop an idea or a business or a strategy, if you want to do some good, 150 people isn't going to work for you. So we need more connections, more and more and more connections. And so what happens? We see more and more people getting connected online, we see more communities coming online, and we see the opportunity for more people to connect and interact and buy and sell and do more good as we go along. There's a woman called Mary Meeker who's she's a hero or heroine of mine. She's a finance person, so it's unusual for me to have a finance hero. But she's the most remarkable woman, and she advises venture capital companies and investors. And she has a mantra at the moment called, and essentially that's rethink everything. And she suggests that we're absolutely on the precipice of the world changing dramatically. And I think she's undoubtedly right. And technology isn't so much leading this change as our demands, you and me, and what we want to achieve. That's what's driving this change and this progress of technology. So how is that happening? And what am I seeing? Well, every day I talk to people. And over the last couple of months, for a couple of years now, I've been talking about wearable technology a whole lot. Does anyone here have a wristband that counts your steps? Okay. You should get one. And I started it, I became a frantic runner and dieter a couple of years ago, and I use one regularly. Connects to my scales, which connects by Wi-Fi to my computer, connects to my phone. It monitors my life. I have become an example of what we call the quantified self. I kind of think, oh, blood pressure getting a little high, I need to watch that. My phone will beep and tell me things like this. Now, it sounds radical, but it's absolutely everywhere, and we're seeing it everywhere. And so the idea of wearable technology is one of these great advancements that hasn't hit us yet, but it's beginning to surround us as a world. Over the next couple of years, everything we buy, from your fridge to your toaster to your cooker, will be connected to the internet. And you will read useless articles in the media and hear useless people like me on the radio talking about this and saying, how useful this will be, and it will remind you to buy more milk when you go to the shop. No, it won't do any of that, because that's all rubbish and means nothing. What is important is it will help you to connect more with your life and live in the moment more. And right now we're at this time where technology is kind of distracting us. You know, there's probably one or two of us who are looking at our phone this evening while people are talking. We do it in pubs, we do it on the street. We're not paying enough attention to life anymore. And technology isn't the culprit, we are, because it's new to us, and like any shiny new toy, we're embracing it and we're starting to say, well, this works. And so all of this technology is doing a lot of good, and things like wearable technology, though, are really fascinating. And looking at, and it's funny because we talk about wearable technology, I think we should change that to livable technology, because it's becoming more and more pervasive in the world. For instance, you've heard of Google Glass. And Google Glasses, which will go on sale, and we'll see, as I look around the room, I'll be able to take videos of you. I'll see a little map to the loo and, you know, what's on special in the bar and stuff like that will show up in the corner of my glasses. Brilliant. It's the haute couture of technology. And where that really becomes useful, though, is as it becomes more livable rather than just wearable. So right now there's a fascinating company called Cute Circuit. They're a London company, husband and wife team. And they started in, I think, 2005 or 6. They started making the most incredible clothes. They made the jackets for U2 on the 2011 tour. And they made recently Nicole Scherzinger, who I'm told is a member of a band called the Pussycat Dolls. They made a dress for her that has Twitter messages emblazoned across the dress. It's fascinating, it's beautiful stuff, it looks fantastic on the catwalk. But this idea of wearable technology, so where's that going? Well, I'll tell you exactly where that's going to go. In a year's time, you will be able to go into Mars Sports, buy a polo neck, and the next time you walk onto the street and the temperature is 19 degrees, which is your preference, it will realize that it's that cold. It will close the sweater closer to your skin, trapping a layer of air, enabling you to warm faster. That's where wearable technology is going. And so we have all of these things going on that makes this technology more useful and more livable as it grows around us. The other thing, and Michael had asked me to talk about new technology, and there's so many things you can talk about, but the other thing that's really interesting at the moment is this incredible rise of a movement called, it's about making stuff. And you've probably all heard about 3D printing and what's going on. And we're lucky in this country to have a particularly brilliant company called McCore 3D Technology. They're based in Dunleer, and they make 3D printers, which Staples, the stationery company, have put into all of their shops in Germany. And so you can go in and you can make stuff. And it sounds kind of fun. Now, it started as a real nerdy kind of hobby. You would buy some plastic ink, you'd put it into your printer, and it would print stuff for you. Really useful, not. But it was like building Lego. And but where does this start to happen? Well, I tell you, recently the interesting stories about people who've used 3D technology. There was a guy sitting at home one night. He'd broken his shower curtain, and he said, "You know what? I could make one of those." So he finds the spec online, and he prints up the rings for his shower curtain, makes them himself. Now that doesn't sound that important, but that's like one of those Archimedes things, all of a sudden he realized he had the capacity to create things without leaving his house because he had access to the technology that would do it for him. And it's called the maker movement, and the idea of people making things is becoming absolutely massive in societies around the world right now. We're seeing it in everything from business to home, and we will see it in ethically questionable ways as well, no doubt, as people begin to generate cells and as technology moves on and genetics improves. So the maker generation, or the maker movement, is one of those interesting things that's starting to fill out across the world. The idea is that all of this technology, all of a sudden, it will surround us, and it's moving and it's getting bigger. Things like 3D printing technology really have the capacity to improve society dramatically. But it's funny because a couple of people have already mentioned about the kind of delta that's left as we move, and social media has got a lot of bad press recently. I've talked about it myself on radio at length, and the Ask FM scandals, the horrendous abuse online of Caroline Credo Perez, Stella Creasy, the journalist threats made to them, and it's just abysmal behaviour. And so one of these things, and it's funny, I live with nerds, but it's always artists who say the most interesting things. And Tiffany mentioned earlier about this vacuum and this distress that's left in society when people move away, say, from the bench. And that's exactly what we've seen happening online. We've seen people migrating, in these groups, and this vacuum is left, which is filled with abuse and bad feeling, and it's filled with things because people maybe don't know any better. And so one of the things I've started to do recently is, I don't know if anyone remembers civics when you were at school. I did civics. Digital civics is something that we need to embrace very quickly. And kids, and they need to take responsibility, as do parents and as do teachers. But things like digital civics become so important at a time like this because we live at the greatest of times, genuinely. And I worked in Cork in a small struggling computer company on the north side of the city 20 years ago, and things have changed so much, and I look at that industry in the computer business, and it really is at the most exciting time now. Things like 3D printing, the tech wearable and stuff like that is so great. Social media is so beneficial to society, and yet there's always the delta and the fear of the shadow moving in on top of it. So one of the things we need to do is be more conscious, and we need to be more aware, and we need to be more responsible. Recently we were talking about the social media, and I said, would parents be concerned about who their parents were, or who their kids were talking to, at a crossroads at 10 o'clock on a Friday night? Well, why aren't they concerned about what they're doing online and what they're saying to people? So those things need to be addressed. On the flip side of that, of course, is that even social media, for all the bad press it's been getting, is truly making so much progress, and we've seen so many movements. The incredible advances in technology, though, now need to move, and so we all need to be part of that movement, and mobilizing people and causes online has never been easier and never more effective. wearable technology and social media and all of that, when it comes together, really can change the world, and it's a great time. There's a 16-year-old kid in America, Jack Andraka is his name. He's remarkable. He was on Newsnight recently, and he's I don't like using the word prodigy, but he really is. And Jack has figured out a way, a pancreatic cancer test, using an 11-cent test. It costs about 11 cents to do. And as it happens, I'm talking at the Web Summit at the end of October about the work that maybe we could take that and what we could do with it in Africa. The idea is a simple one. If people can wear things like this, if we can wear more technology, if we can do and use more of the technology that people like Jack and Dracker are brilliantly creating, well, then things can get an awful lot better and an awful lot quicker. And then you mobilize a cause online. We've seen it with the Arab Spring. We've seen it for so much good. And the opportunity is sort of unbounded in a way. So, to finish by going back to Mary Meeker and the internet sage, it really, really is time to rethink everything. So whether you're in business and talking about entrepreneurship, or whether you're in business and whether you work or whether you play just, everything that you look at on a daily basis now will be affected and can be affected for the positive. So maybe using the technology is one thing, but it's probably time that we just looked up for a minute and maybe started living in the moment and looking at what we can do next. Thanks a lot.
So our next speaker is Mike Crosby from UCC.
Okay, so I have a timer. I teach in the Digital Arts and Humanities program at UCC. Okay. So I teach in the Digital Arts and Humanities program in UCC. It's actually one of the largest digital arts and humanities programs in the world. We have 19 PhD researchers, we have 10 people finishing an MA, we have 24 starting. And we're starting the first undergraduate program in digital arts and humanities. In the English-speaking world, there's one in Würzburg and there's one in Pisa. But we're the only university in the English-speaking world to actually have an official undergraduate program in digital arts and humanities. So I'm very lucky, in that I get to play with technology toys. And the university indulges that, and they have for years, and that's been fantastic. But I have a question, and the question's fallen off the top of the projector, which is, how would you teach someone to surf? Would you teach someone to surf by talking at them for 24 hours, 2 hours a week, and making them write a 4,000-word essay about it? And the answer obviously is no. You couldn't possibly teach someone how to surf by doing that. Yet the primary delivery mode in most of our third-level institutions is lecturing. It's a mode of teaching which is about 2,000 years old, if not more. It has resisted every innovation. Print, photocopier, stencil, and the internet. Lecturing has resisted them all. But it's such a terrible waste of resources that it's actually almost immoral. It costs about an average of €20,000 a year to put a student in a third-level institution in this country. And not to use technology to empower their learning is such an appalling waste of the taxpayers' money that I strongly believe it's immoral. And that drives a lot of my pedagogical innovation. I don't just play with the tech toys because I can play with them. I use them because I think I can use them to do better than just passive info. And it takes me back to the new wave of founding universities in Europe after the Napoleonic Wars. One of the first was the University of Berlin. And that's a statue of William von Humboldt, who was responsible for establishing it in 1810. And Humboldt described what the university teacher does, and he drew a clear distinction between what the university teacher does and the second level teacher does. And he made it very clear that what happens in a university is research. The student does research. The student doesn't sit and hear about other people's research. The student does research, and the university teacher guides them through the process of research. They walk the walk. And of course, the obvious question one might say is, how can you possibly have student-centered, research-led teaching at undergraduate level? Because we don't have the resources. Research, in our mind, implies the science, technology, engineering mode of research. It implies CERN. It implies the Large Hadron Collider. We can't possibly do undergraduate research without that sort of investment, but actually we can. I'm very fortunate that I'm in the humanities. Unlike the sciences, which reduce things to simple mechanistic things, the humanities deal with real problems. We deal with real people, we deal with real complexity. Most of the interesting parts of history is about real people doing stupid things. And the original tools of the humanities are pen and paper. The original mode of humanities scholarship in history, in English, is reading texts, reading original primary sources, taking notes from it, and then sorting them out and finding patterns. And what's important is not the scale of the technology, it's the methodology. And how, whereas years ago, and that's a picture of one of my research students, he's actually from Cork, he's finished a PhD on Wellington's Irish officers, and it's photographs that I took of him reading a genealogy of a family from Clare, and noting what they had done. And in the past, for access to materials like that, you had to physically go where they were. And you had to use the materials, and a limited number of people could get at them. The thing now is that there's actually a superfluity of digital materials available for undergraduate teaching. So we have this swing. There's a couple of things up there on that slide. There's the old picture of the original Hollerith census machine from the 1890 census for encoding the US Census of Population on the original punch cards, which then became the IBM punch cards, which were the tools used for census in America, in Belgium, in France, and a great many other places. And from that comes the modern digital, the 1901-1911 census, which we have online. So we've now made the leap from where the census records were paper, they were in Dublin, they were precious, to they're everywhere. Anyone that wants the census records for their townland can download them. That graph in the corner was done in Excel. Everybody has Excel or LibreOffice spreadsheet. There's any number of spreadsheets you can do that with. It's Abbey Dorney in 1901. A student did that, an undergraduate did it maybe 15 years ago by taking the 1901 census data, and it looks at literacy. It's an age profile of literacy for people in Abbey Dorney in 1901, and if you look at it closely, you can almost see, if you project back, when they opened the primary school, because you can see where the literacy rate becomes 100%, whereas previously it wasn't. So that's fairly simple, but it's research. It's engaging with real problems. It's taking messy information about people. It's reading it closely and feeling the texture and finding the stories and the information in it. That's the sort of information that companies that want to send you junk mail need to know. They need to go into the data and find that. So that sort of research skill is a saleable, marketable skill. And the skills are transferable from one sort of content to another. This is one that's closer to home. All of the witness statements from the War of Independence are now online. There's about 17,000 of them. They used to be locked in the military archives in Dublin. This is one from a man in West Cork. And last year, as part of a portfolio-based assessment in a second-year undergraduate course, I made all the students read a witness statement. Because they're all available as PDFs, it wasn't just a question of photocopying one and handing it out. I could actually give everyone in the class a different one. And we could do a close reading of them all, and then we could analyse the trends that emerged across them. And then for a little bit more technology, as an optional part of that portfolio, I said, right, if you want to, as part of your portfolio, you can transcribe and mark it up in XML. And you can mark up the place names, and the people and the organizational titles, and if enough people and when enough people have marked up that text and those texts in that way, then we can run right across them and we can get a list of everyone who was a battalion adjutant in the old IRA, or everyone who was a training officer in the different counties, once we've marked those up. All of the students who chose to do that little extra bit of work did it really well because it was simple. It was a little small extra increment of work, technology enabled. The rest of the class said, oh, technology, that's scary, we can't do that. But now, I can go back to this year's class and I can say, look, last year this was optional, they did it, they succeeded, you can do it. I have evidence to prove that second year undergraduates can do it, so this year, you're all doing it. Because it can be done, and you're all going to learn that skill, and you're all going to understand how, in this case, XML markup, which is one of the basic technologies of the internet, works. So you will acquire that skill. It's a piece of history, but it's also a set of analytical skills. And while I believe content is important, I believe in empowering students by challenging them and by picking skills that they need to learn, and then I will find the content that allows me to convey those skills. And I will do it in little ways, little steps at a time, and I will scaffold it. They will sometimes look at you and say, would you shut up and lecture and set us an essay, instead of making us do all these things. But they will respond to challenges. And if you scaffold them properly and safety net them, then you can move away from the old tired lecture and essay format. You can then actually teach people the intellectual equivalent of riding a bicycle. You can teach them how to do research as undergraduates. And more places across the world, in more and more universities, it's written into the strategic plan at UCC that we will move to research-based teaching at undergraduate level. We will do this, and technology enables it. So we get students to engage with real-world problems by making them do it. And the only way, really, if you want skillful graduates, is you empower them by challenging them. And if you want to teach them to surf, you put them on a board, you let them fall off, you expect them to get wet, and enough of them will learn how to do it that you will have world-class surfers. And that is how I approach teaching history and digital humanities, which I think I do a reasonably good job at. As far as surfing goes, I'm afraid I'm pathetically useless. I can't stand up on the board yet, but someday that will come after I've got wet enough.
So our next speaker is Siobhan Finn, and Siobhan works with Innovates Cork Innovates even.
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to say thanks to Jane and to Michael for affording Cork Innovates the opportunity to have a platform here tonight. Excuse me. Jane rang me late last week and asked me would I participate in this event, and I hesitated quite a bit because my first reaction was, what do I know about new innovative technologies? And Cork Innovates, despite having the term Innovates in its name, isn't actually terribly innovative about the way it uses technology. We just do it as everybody else does it on a day-to-day basis in terms of Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. That's the first aspect of this. The second is, this time last year, and Greg will absolutely vouch for this, shortly after I had taken on the role, I was faced with the dilemma of having to embrace social and digital media, and I knew next to nothing about it. Most certainly I was completely unaware of the impact and it could have and the potential it had to build a community. And I know several conversations with Greg around that, and where he almost begged and pleaded with me to get on Twitter. Eventually I think felt sorry for me and said, look, I'll do it for you for a while, because he was doing some PR for us, but by the end of the year, Siobhan, you have to do this yourself. So I came back into the role very early in January, and I think it took me 10 minutes to type my first tweet, because I was so absolutely terrified of making a mistake and putting it out there in the public world and everybody would know about it. What I since discovered is that people take a few seconds to read a tweet and then move on to the next one. So that lies, I suppose, testament very much to the fact that, you know, how fast this world is in terms of how we're moving with social and digital media. Coming back to what Cork Innovates is all about, the project is funded through Cork City and County Council and was the brainchild of a group of agencies and organisations who came together here in Cork a number of years ago. All these agencies and organisations focus on entrepreneurship and the business community here in Cork. And for anybody that's an entrepreneur running a business, you will be very aware that there are multiple agencies and organisations out there who support entrepreneurship and business. The challenge is figuring out which one to go to first. And this isn't a challenge that's unique to Cork, it exists in every county throughout Ireland. I was fortunate enough, again very early on to the project last year, I attended a conference in Brussels where a number of us were asked to talk about what was happening in entrepreneurship in our own particular geographical jurisdictions. And I stood up and I talked about what was happening in Ireland, and I mentioned the enterprise boards, Enterprise Ireland, the BICs, the universities, the ITs, and so many more. And so many of the other countries who were in that same room said, you know, this is amazing, you have so many agencies working together in Ireland. Really, you're so advantaged in terms of helping to grow entrepreneurship and helping to scale your business. The challenge is there are so many that those at the outset of their journey don't know where to start. So coming back to what Cork Innovates is about, it's very much about signposting what is available to the startup and to the business community here in Cork. It's funded through our City and County Council, who through our City Manager Tim Lucy and our County Manager Martin Reardon, both of whom are very forward-thinking individuals, recognise the need, I suppose, almost create an umbrella brand around what we're doing here in Cork, and therein came Cork Innovates. So what we as a project do, and I keep referring to we even though on a day-to-day basis it's just me sitting behind the brand, but I have 12 agencies and organisations that meet on a very regular basis. We meet to look at what's happening within the world of entrepreneurship here in Cork, what services exist already, if there are gaps within the services, how to fill those gaps, either under the Cork Innovates brand, which we have done successfully with a number of different initiatives, or through individual organisations and agencies at the table as well. So it very much depends on what the message of the particular initiative is and how that fits with a particular organisation. We have, as I've mentioned, taken several steps into supporting the entrepreneur over the last almost 16 months at this stage. But interestingly, what has been fundamental to all of it, it's been about connecting the individual either within a network or creating a network which encompasses so many existing agencies. And I suppose for me, one of the most enlightening experiences within the entire project was probably way back January, February of this year. One of the key tasks at the outset of the project was to build a website, which is corkinnovates.com, which we did. We worked very hard, we built it. The entire website was built on and hung upon this navigation system, and the focus of the navigation system was to provide the hard and fast data to entrepreneurs and business people around what services and supports were available. So it was a really momentous task in terms of pulling all that information together, but we did it. It took hours, days, weeks and months of pulling it together, researching it, checking it, double checking it, testing it, building it into a navigation system, checking the navigation system. I can't begin to tell you how tedious the whole process was. And we built it and we launched the website, and we were all very happy with it, and it was doing exactly what we wanted it to do. It literally did what it said in the tin. And then I sat down and started to look at the Google Analytics, and what I discovered was the least amount of traffic on the website was going to the navigation system. The most amount of traffic was going to what I would call the softer services within the website. So our blog, our news feed, our Twitter feed, our case studies. And that to me really got me thinking in terms of, well, what is Cork Innovates all about? And through talking to lots of different individuals, and a number of the individuals and agencies are here in the room tonight, there were really 4 key activities which the project hangs its activities upon, or the 4 key pillars. They are connecting, communicating, collaborating and celebrating. And that's exactly what Cork Innovates does on a day-to-day basis. We connect communities, be it the agencies and organisations working with entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs themselves. We communicate, so we break down the barriers, we get people engaged, we get people talking, we collaborate, we get people working together, and we celebrate, we go out and celebrate our successes. I would say that we're very much, even though we're 16, 17 months into the project at this stage, I spoke to an organisation in the States a couple of weeks ago, and in fact one of their representatives is attending the EcoWell conference here in Cork on Thursday. And they told me it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 years to build the kind of network we're building here in Cork. But in 16 months we have done incredibly well in terms of the community that we have created. And it's interesting, I suppose, and I'll just finish on this note, in terms of what we're doing here in Cork. When I started in this role, if I did anything, I drank an awful lot of coffee, because I went out and I met so many people, and I drank cups of coffee after cups of coffee after cups of coffee. And if somebody said to me, what did you do for the first 3 or 4 months? I drank coffee. I talked, but I drank coffee, and that's literally how it happened. And I built layer after layer after layer of network. And I suppose looking back on it, there were probably 2 key learnings in it from me, that despite the power of technology, it comes back to the human and the individual and the entrepreneur at the end of the day, and we need to put the person at the centre of our network. From all perspectives, whether it's economic entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, or just getting to know your neighbour at the end of the day, and taking the time to communicate, and taking the time to pick up the phone instead of sending the email. And I know certainly, and Breda referred to having met 2 people here in the room tonight who she'd never met face to face. I was one of them. Breda and I talked over email for months. We never actually met each other. So I suppose that's one of the challenges of social and digital media, is remembering to put the person back into the centre of it. And I would believe that we have done that very successfully through Cork Innovates. I didn't have a massive budget when I went out there to build the project. So I had to figure out ways of doing it. Drinking coffee was one, getting on social media was another. I've had to give up the coffee affliction, but certainly the social media element of my role is growing more and more, and I'm astounded by the power of it and the level of influence, and the number of people that have said to me when I go out now and attend events, gosh, you're always on social media, you're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn. That's a new language for me, because 6-12 months ago I wouldn't have put myself out there, but it has truly proven to me the power and the influence that it has. And just, I suppose, on one final note, I was talking to an individual last week whose company is based here in Cork, but whose headquarters are in Dublin, and he was trying to find ways of building his own network here in Cork. And I said, drink coffee, get on social media, they're the first 2 tips. And secondly, get out there and meet people, and Cork is different, and we have an incredible network here in Cork that we don't have anywhere else. And there is a phrase out there we've all heard mentioned, which is the 6 degrees of separation. But in fact, when I was speaking to Emmett last week, he summed it up very well, and in Cork it's 1 degree of separation. So inevitably, if I don't know Kieran sitting there, I know somebody who knows Kieran, or I'd heard about Greg for so long before I met him. So it's so easy to connect. And again, that's what Cork Innovates is about. So thank you very much.
Okay, so our next speaker is Roland Leonard. I'm just going to turn off the projector.
Hello everyone. I have a page of notes, or as it's known here, 27 tweets that I've written out, and I'm using an old analog iPad, so I've had to write it myself. And if I had one of those 3D printers, I'd have made a lectern, but instead I have to hold it in the style of a Eurovision host. So on that note, Velkommen to everyone who's watching on the internet. My name's Ronan. When I started out in this kind of sphere, I was 18, and I was a real go-getter, and the world was my oyster. And now I'm 33, and I know how to get things done, and my lifestyle can't afford oysters. So I want to explain where I come from, which is I work in a very small shoestring, and I get things done. What I do is, over the years, I've released records for people that aren't me, as well as records that I've written and produced myself. I put on hundreds and hundreds of gigs, mainly music, some stand-up comedy. I write and perform theatre plays in Cork and Dublin and Galway, the cultural hubs of the world. In recent years I've moved into making podcasts and blogs that have really proven the very slow ripple effect of social media, where 10 friends turns into 2 acquaintances of each, and then slowly it's going to prove that it does work, but slowly and not with the bombast that we like to think it does. I am also a journalist. I currently write for Cork's leading daily evening newspaper, and I also used to run a magazine called Cork's List, and I'm slowly developing a new online thing because I'm of the opinion that the way things work right now, we're in a bit of a pendulum shift, which we were referring to there, that things will be a lot more different in a year or 2 or 3, and I'm beginning to think that 24/7 isn't the way the internet can be best harnessed, and I think we need to move back to 10/5 and realise that we need to take time off for both fallow reasons and just personal reasons, social reasons, and come back with new information rather than constantly just retweeting and, in the best meaning of the word, regurgitating other people's content. My experience and skill set is based in Cork City and the internet. They're the 2 places I know the best. And so when I was given the topic of this evening, which was the topic I've extrapolated, which is bringing people together with positive change using digital tools. And then the topic of my subsection is creating a new space for independent thought. And I've added brackets, which is and expression. So I looked up classic public speaking, look up the definition of one of the words. So tool is the means of accomplishing something. That's the way we mostly understand what a tool is. But the following definition, which was the second one, is what caught my eye, which is an implement used in the practice of a vocation. Which leads me to one of my recurring points that I've yet to fully develop, but I've said it a lot, is I think Ireland's idea, or a lot of the Irish people's idea of success is based or heavily influenced by Ireland's most influential group, which is the GAA. And the GAA is an amateur movement where the idea of is just doing the best with what you have, and somebody's going to be the best, it's not always going to be you, which isn't the exact replication of success in a modern environment where we can't all be the best by virtue of geography in the GAA. And that's the same thing I have with arts and expression, that we can't all be the best, so we can't define success as being the best because you're doing the most with the resources you have. Which reminds me of an old joke, which is how do you become a millionaire in the music industry? Start off as a multimillionaire. So a lot of my schemes I would consider get less broke quickly as opposed to get rich fast. So looking at the tools, the word tool, the purpose of a tool is it is not anything in itself. It's neither an idea or an end product, which is what entrepreneurs actually specialise in, coming up with ideas and somehow getting something done. It mightn't be what we originally envisaged. So in many ways, digital tools are the perfect modern embodiment of the middleman, which most of us talk about getting rid of rather than needing more of. A tool is also not used in isolation. It needs material or content, which is the point I'm bringing to the reason I was kind of asked here is I'm not one of the founding members, but I am one of the next wave of the Indie Cork Film Festival, which is kicking off in a few weeks, hashtag Indie Cork, where we're not getting into the huge background, but suddenly there was a vacuum created for, there wasn't a vacuum, it's the opposite of a vacuum. Suddenly this new situation of people with certain talents and skills were suddenly at a position where they needed to start a new film festival to continue using their experience and skills. So there's no point replicating something that it does okay in its own right, which is once again back to the idea of success. I heard a great phrase once from Nigeria, which is you can't be the biggest and the smallest at the same time. So once again, brings back to what is your idea of success? So we decided that a new film festival was going to happen, and we didn't have the same resources of festivals that are 50 years old and using models of 50-year-old, like we were talking there with lecturing in the system of 2,000 years old. So the resources we did have is the internet, which is mainly digital tools. And when I was speaking to friends and colleagues talking about that I was doing a speech today about digital tools, most people's response was like Facebook. And I'm like, no, social media is the most visible, but I don't think the most productive of digital tools. So just to speak about the film or the Indie Cork that we're looking at, I broke it down into 3 main bodies that we needed, or segments, and I've broken it down to content, admin and publicity. Now, a festival without content is no festival. So in our case, obviously, films is the main thing, as well as other events. So for films, we needed submissions, and we used a variety of systems, which the old Post was one where people could email in DVDs, which was, would you believe, the less used form of submission. And there was one particular website called the shortfilmdepot.com, where people would upload their own films to that, and then using links submitted to loads of film festivals around the world. So we got over 3,500 submissions for about 100 screening slots, which was fantastic. But then it needed us that we needed more than a handful of people to view those 3,500 films. So we ended up using the media, or the social media group of the Indie Cork Film Festival, where people volunteered to start watching them and recommend ones that really stood out, basically. So in many ways, while we say it's a very democratic process, in this case it was, except to people whose films weren't selected, of course, and then they'll say it was a skewed system, but that's life. So after the content was picked, you would do your research. I used to work for a different film festival many years ago, being 10, and there was a lot of desperately looking for information and faxes coming in, whereas now it's almost understood that when you submit a film, the content includes your biog, your relevant credits, that whole thing. So it makes it a lot easier to run, in theory, but still it takes a lot of work, man and woman hours, to actually produce these catalogues. And then the final thing was selection, which I spoke of earlier, that through the form of committee, and but with a hierarchical system, it went up. So we finally have all those films selected. Then we got brought down to admin, and we used use a system called Basecamp. I'm sure there's other ones, but basically it's a kind of private group email meets online forum system, and it's been a fantastic way of keeping in touch. And unlike previous things, not only could we keep in touch, there was an exact record of what everyone has said, and there's no way of misinterpreting or misremembering what was agreed. And we also had a membership system which we borrowed, was inspired heavily by the Cork City Forest Group, where people are members of the festival by buying a share, works out about €13 a month, and that entire membership is the film festival. The committee of which I'm a part of that's running it, we don't own the festival in any way. Time will tell how that system works, because as is well known, one of the first things any group needs to have in Ireland is the split, but we've had no major falling outs just yet. And then there's meetings. So we obviously have committee meetings about once a month. We then have public meetings, which is for all the members to come along. It's brought a whole new line of dialogue between the old system of a festival, the standard, the orthodox system of a festival would usually be, we are on in this particular week of the year, we'll tell you a month in advance what we're doing, just keep in touch, look out for the posters, the physical posters. Whereas now it's about a constant dialogue, in some senses just between the people who follow it as friends, going, oh hey, how's it going, any new films, etc. But it also means that at any time anyone in the world can just check our Facebook page or Twitter feed and go, alright, we see what you're up to, which has added a whole new dynamic, because people feel a sense of ownership, but they also, to me anyway, understand or empathise more with the resources and what we have and what we don't have. as opposed to I heard that X other film festivals are doing this, why aren't you doing it? It's a little bit more understanding. And then the final thing is publicity, because as I wrote down very brilliantly, a festival in theory is to bring people together, but when we run a festival, we want to bring people to us. And that is how success can be measured for a festival. It is footfall, it is people seeing the films. A filmmaker wants their films to be seen by people. We want people to come to see the films. That to me anyway, is the only concept of success. You can't just go, we showed great films. That's the same as when people say, we've made posters for the event. That doesn't mean anything. The posters have to be in places for that to be considered using a poster properly. And so in terms of publicity, we are using social media. I'm not going to speak specifically about Indie Cork right now. I'll talk about the various other groups I use, mainly on Facebook. One of my complaints would be that you can be liked by thousands, checked by hundreds, and interact with tens of people. And I don't think that's an amazing result from all the work that people put in. Now obviously, if you pay, you get more of a reaction. I asked on my own Facebook feed how people felt about that, and some people were like feeling that this is Facebook misleading us or something. But my take on it is they are a commercial entity. This was always the plan, and I find it funny that people feel disenfranchised by something they've projected on to a different group. So I don't know if you would consider that bad publicity or good publicity to get what I factor in to be roughly about 1% of your fans being actually aware of what you're doing. Getting back to the creating a new space for independent thought. The festival itself is called Indie Cork. It's for independent filmmakers. It's been run independently. Independently doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't have a specific point. We've had very interesting conversations ourselves about what does independent mean. We're really hoping it brings the idea of independent as a conversation. I consider independent to mean you're not contractually obliged to do much. That's kind of my take on it. And so when we say we're creating a new space for independent thought, in this case an independent thought festival, it's a new space for a festival, but bringing back to the theory of a vocation. We aren't in this to make money, so we're going to succeed on that front. So what we want to do is bring people to see films, and once again using the resources we have. And it's gone back to, as we were talking earlier, that it's still a lot down to coffees, pubs that are already there and supporting it. So I've just lost my point. There we go. So the digital tools have, I feel, working alongside long-standing practical tools. There hasn't been a quick fix app that has made everything work better, or if there is, I haven't heard of it yet. That has brought me to the 27th tweet without a very good third act. I apologise about that, and I will say there is a question and answer session afterwards, and general chatting, which I won't be able to stay for because I'm running just a question session. I'm running a table quiz, but I hope you really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rest of the night. Thanks to Jane for organising this.
Thanks, Ronan. So our next speaker is coming from the CIT today. Michael Linehan. He's from the Union Students of Ireland. CIT. Thank you, Michael.
How are you doing? I'm new to this whole public speaking thing, so bear with me, there'll probably be a few mistakes. My name is Michael Linehan. I'm a fourth year BIS student, and I'm with the CIT Students' Union, as you were just told. And basically what I'm going to be focusing on is a lot of the changes that social media has brought to students nowadays, and I suppose a lot of the positives that can come from social media for students and for society as a whole. For the last 6 months, during the summer basically, and from last March onwards, as part of my course, I did a placement with a local tech startup in Mahon called Trusted. Some of you might have heard of them. They got awarded the top tech startup in Europe by the EU Commission, and they're really leading the way for Irish startups at the moment, and look to be a real success story in months to come. And I suppose one of the great things I learned about social media at Trusted is to just use it all the time. I mean, when we started the work placement, our lecturers had us warned on the pain of death that if you're caught on like Facebook when you're meant to be working, that you're gone, kaput, see you later. But then like when I got into Trusted, it was just such a great thing that the lads just basically said to me, get tweeting, get posting while you're in work, take a few funny pictures, send them out. They wanted us to interact with I suppose just the tech community as a whole, and just with basically Irish businesses, and just get our names out there. So I suppose I really saw the benefit of it when we organised the pub summit, which some of you might have attended. It was on in Electric Bar, and I mean on a Wednesday night, it attracted like 400 plus people, and I definitely put that down to the social, to the promotion that we did through social media. I'd say for about a week or 2 weeks, I was just basically posting on Facebook, Twitter, emailing people. By the way, actually, I'm the other person that Breda never met before, and was emailing, or met through email, and met me for the first time tonight. But that basically give you an idea of what I was doing in that time. Was just basically just sharing, just connecting with people, expanding my network, and using the network that Trust have already had, just through social media, just to raise the profile of the event. So it got me thinking a lot about how I suppose I can use that kind of same strategy in my new role as a CIT communications officer. So one of the things I did, which we were doing at Trustive, was I set up a blog. So this has only been done in the last few weeks. We set up a blog, and basically up until now, the communication strategy in CIT was solely through actual physical publications of our magazine, Explicit. Now this magazine is used to disseminate information to the students on a range of topics, from academic information, rules and regulations, issues, self-help, mental and sexual health, pretty much just student-centric issues. But I kind of got thinking that, is this, number one, a permanent source of information? I mean, will students have that exact issue with the exact article in their bag at the time that they need information? And also, I suppose it's not necessarily a very urgent means of communication. Now, I enjoy reading the magazine. I think it's a great thing, but at the same time, I just thought there needs to be a better strategy for how we get information to students where, they're in control, they can find it, and it's shared among a wider audience than, the people who choose to pick up the magazine. So now the strategy coming into this year, and what I've learned from my time at Trusted, was, get all the union officers blogging about their specific events, initiatives. One of them that we'll be doing in particular is the Please Talk campaign. We're jumping on board with that a lot this year, and Mental Health Week, which we've got going this year. And we really want to, with good initiatives like this, there's no point really in having these in place if the students aren't aware, if they're not engaging, if they're not actually coming to these events. So we plan on sharing links to the blog, to the various blog posts through social media, and constantly sharing it to reach the wider audience and just get a more informed student body. I suppose another area that I think social media can be of great benefits to students, and one that I discussed at length with Michael, is in the area of job creation. I suppose pretty much social media has enabled students to reach a wider range of contacts in pretty much every industry. I mean, social media is often mistaken as a tool that is used by students in just IT courses, but this isn't true. I mean, a student in any course can find, someone high up working in their industry and connect with them. Basically social media has broken down the barriers to communication that have existed for so long. I mean, a few months or a few summers ago, actually, I tried to get a part-time internship, and it was unsuccessful. but basically I was just spending my time, emailing like the generic, info at company X, emailing them my CV and kind of saying, can you send this on to who it may concern. Whereas now, a student, it's as simple as setting up a LinkedIn profile, and just basically looking for the HR manager, adding them, mailing them directly, being bold, I suppose, and just getting in contact. And that network is actually open to students now, and it's fantastic. And it's definitely, it just shows some of the positives that can come out of social media. A lot of students, something that it actually kind of annoys me is that so many of my peers at CIT have so many skills and talents, but it's like they're really afraid to ever promote themselves in a positive way, to put themselves out there and to say, yeah, I'm good at this, and I'm really good at this. It's something that I suppose is just shyness. Some students are introverts, there's nothing wrong with it, but at the same time, it often means that, they're left in the background of the people who can big themselves up, who can almost bullshit their way into a job, you know what I mean? But it does happen, and then the students who might be talented are left in the background. But this is definitely one of the things that I think social media can change. Take for example, you might have an introverted student studying software engineering. They might be making web applications, mobile applications, which are fantastic, successful, and yet they might crumble, in a formal interview in a graduate placement, and they're left with nothing. And basically, if they get active, in social media, on LinkedIn, where they can, showcase their talents by putting up projects that they've completed, by marketing their apps through social media, using its viral effect, surely, it'll come to a stage where maybe employers who have embraced social media for their recruitment strategy could essentially hire them on these merits alone. And I definitely think recruitment is going that way. So I think more students need to embrace it. But I think it takes a big effort from the colleges. And something I definitely like to see is a lot more education on social media and the correct usage of it. As we've heard already in some of the previous talks, that there are negative downsides to social media, particularly in cyberbullying, and it's got this bad reputation where, even in college it was banned at certain times in our computer labs, you weren't allowed to access Facebook, and a lot of the academic world has, kind of disregarded it. But I think the change needs to be that it needs to be embraced, so that it can actually be, students can actually be educated on how to use it properly, and not just, telling them that no, you can't do it, because it's gotten to the stage where every student is on a social networking site. So why not teach them how to use it properly? Then, I suppose just telling them that it's a no-no, it makes no sense when this is the way the world is going, from everything from e-commerce to recruitment. So I think really, particularly being in CIT, in one of the biggest institutes of technology in Ireland, I want to see them leading the way in how we view social media and how students can use social media to better themselves. And I suppose that's pretty much it for me, so I'd like to thank you all.
Thanks, Michael. So our next speaker, I'm pleased to personally know myself actually, is Greg Canty of Fusion Communications. So, Greg.
Thanks a million, everyone, and thanks to Mike for asking me to come here today. Thanks to the other Michael for giving me an absolutely perfect introduction onto what we're going to talk about today. My name is Greg. I'm from Fusion. We're a marketing and a PR company. We're based in Cork. We have clients in Dublin. One of the things I do the whole time is that we work with our clients to get their messages out there. And we actually use language, we call it parallel media, not social media, because it's not all about just one channel, the kind of traditional channel, and getting your stuff out there. We've got social media, which is another fabulous way to push things out. So I personally, however I've ended up doing it, I've no idea, but poor old Greg ends up with the job of educating all our clients to kind of really jump in there. And social media, if you use it correctly, is so powerful. It's absolutely incredible. So we have this scenario where we've got a really powerful platform, and then we've got this big, huge downside. So I end up teaching anyway, and I find myself in this role, and at the same time I find myself reading terrible things about what's going on in the world, and some kids committing suicide because they've been affected by cyberbullying. And we just felt ourselves we needed to jump in there and do something. So I was kind of thinking to myself, if I was cyberbullied in the morning, what would I actually do? And despite all my knowledge of this incredibly powerful area and all the great stuff we can do, I just genuinely didn't know what to do. So I don't know, one night I went home and I started doing a whole load of Googling online. We found a bucket load of information that was really good and solid as to, if you're being cyberbullied or abused in any way online, what should you do about it? Ironically, some of the great information was on sites like Facebook. Now, my little issue with them a little bit is that you have to dig fairly deep within all of their websites to find this stuff. But Facebook had some great information on there. Twitter, I couldn't find a whole pile, and there's other kind of resources and online platforms where there's pretty much nothing at all, and we've heard some of those being mentioned already. Okay, so I thought in our role and the job that we do, maybe we could do a little bit of good in this area. So I came into work the next day, sat down with one of our graphic designers, and we effectively had about 30 pages of information, and I reckoned, okay, would we produce a booklet? Well, that was going to be a big waste of time because any young person isn't going to digest the full booklet as to what to do. So we just pared down all our core messages and we developed this really simple poster. And it was a little thing called Safebook. And this is the guy. And believe it or not, this is known better than any of us in the room. If you take all our social media contacts, all the people we know, I'd say you can multiply them by 10, maybe multiply them by 100. You wouldn't be as well known as this guy, because that's travelled to over 100 countries. It's been used in conferences and resource centres all around the world. It was just a really simple idea. The first thing we did was we just did a simple little picture. Now, this was designed to help young people. Okay, so we called it Safebook, which obviously is a big play on the word Facebook. So we thought this was an idea and a word that would actually connect with young people. We just did a nice simple little graphic. We had a really good young lad inside, Paul Wade is his name, who came up with the infographic. He turned it around seriously in just about half an hour. So this is you. Before you post anything, you might think about what you're saying. Really simple. Only connect with your friends. Be kind to others. Wow, there's a big, huge chunk of advice. Don't share your password. It was a really simple one. Keep your settings private. Another simple one. Don't be hurtful towards others. Now you kind of think, and in the event that you are being cyberbullied at all, that's all about promoting kind of good behaviour and responsible behaviour online. But if you are cyberbullied, a few simple little guidelines at the end of the poster as to what to do. Okay, if people needed to then, they could download the poster from our website and all that kind of stuff. So they've done that and it's been shared around the world. A few months ago we were asked to translate it into Hungarian. It was used at a conference in Zagreb. We've been asked to translate it into loads of other different languages. So we kind of pulled ourselves into this whole area, and I was asked then to kind of go to a few schools and what I talk to them and explain the poster and all this kind of stuff, and that's really good. And what I was really impressed with actually, this whole issue kicked off around this time last year when it was midterm break in the secondary schools. And when we developed the poster and we just pushed it out on our own Facebook, we have a PR team, they pushed it out to some of the newspapers and that. But we were absolutely blown away by the number of teachers who called us during their own midterm break, who kind of said, yeah, we need something like this to talk to our own kids. So we were lucky at that early stage that we were able to kind of talk to some of these teachers and some of these resource centres, just to get an idea as to how we could help them. And what we kind of realised is that a lot of them hadn't a bull's notion about any of the social media stuff. At the heart of everything there was a little bit of bullying, but this was kind of taking bullying to a new dimension. Like I know myself, if I got a kick up the backside in the schoolyard when I was a young fella, my dad, the same thing probably happened to him, so he could give me a bit of advice on it. Whereas if I went home and told him I was being bullied on Facebook, he'd probably give me a clip around the ear and saying, I told you not to be on that stupid thing anyway. You know, so if you think, it's taking you into a totally different dimension. But I went to a few schools anyway, and I thought, okay, I'm going to chat here. And the schools told me that they'd embraced it. Now what they'd done, and fair enough, and it was their big effort, they put a poster up on the wall. You know, the teachers themselves didn't know what to actually say to the kids, so I started talking to them. And, you know, the principal was telling me, you know, we're banning Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And back to what Michael was saying. So on one side, I'm trying to get my clients to use these powerful platforms. I'm trying to educate young people to kind of use these platforms to find a new job. And a few years younger than that, when all the kids are hungry for this new technology, we're telling them, no, you can't go that's banned, this is banned, the other. So the kind of place I'm coming around to, and it's kind of the title of my talk today a little bit, is, you know, we need to teach and not preach. So that's just a really, really simple idea. Okay, so let's take that as an idea. And you're talking about third level. Like for me, I think you can bring this back to secondary school. Like the kids are supposed to be 13 when they go onto Facebook. Okay, so as a 13-year-old, if I'm doing my essays, well, do you know what now? Do your essays on a blog site. WordPress.com, it's free. Every essay, put it on a blog. Really, really simple. Share it on your Facebook page, share it on Twitter. Okay, I'm in the economics class. Well, the economics class should have a Twitter account, and we should be following Business and Finance and Fortune 500 and all the other kind of different publications. If I'm doing science, I should be following different science titles and all that kind of stuff on Twitter. The classroom should have a Facebook group, and the kids should be, you know, encouraged to participate in the group and have nice, polite conversations with each other. But aren't kids horrible? You know, they're absolutely cruel to each other, and they say awful things, and they put each other down in a way that we would never do. Isn't that right? So this comes to the whole idea of, you know, we need to teach and we don't need to preach. So who in the name of God is going to do this teaching? So that's really, really simple. That's down to us. Now the first part of that is, you know, for parents and teachers, we need to learn about all of this stuff. If we want to teach our own kids about privacy settings and all that kind of stuff, well, maybe first of all, we need to jump in there and learn ourselves. That's fine. But maybe outside of the technical stuff, you know, do we need to have a big conversation ourselves about how we're behaving online? And are we in any situation, any position ourselves to actually teach anyone? And I feel the social media platforms are really, really powerful. But I feel a lot of the time when we go online, we actually just forget about ourselves. A number of people today mentioned about that there's someone else at the other end of the keyboard. I was watching Sinead O'Connor perform one night on The Late Late Show. And there was people tweeting after, but it wasn't saying The Late Late Show was rubbish or anything. They were using her name. And they were saying really, really pointed stuff, you know, you were absolutely rubbish tonight. I kind of, okay, that's probably a little bit hurtful. You know, they were directed to her, so I didn't take too much notice of it and just said, yeah, maybe that's not right. But later, I could see Sinead O'Connor on Twitter, and it was obvious she was really, really upset, trying to get back to some of these people. You know, they pointed an insult very, very directly at someone online. I think someone said earlier that, you know, we'd be a little bit positive online. I know one of my good friends says stuff to me like, you know, I'm afraid that Twitter's gone a little bit negative. And it was kind of an unusual way of looking at it, because what he was saying to me really is that we've got a little bit of responsibility ourselves to be positive on these platforms. And if you see kind of people going off the deep end or whatever, starting to get a bit abusive, we do need to kind of pull them back in order. A few months ago, we were tweeting about a job opportunity we had. That was an opportunity for an intern. And we were going to use the job bridge scheme. It was really, really simple. We were tweeting it out, putting it out on Facebook, putting it out on LinkedIn. You know, PR intern post available with Fusion, but you must qualify for the job bridge scheme. And a few people have gone through Fusion, and we've actually brought them in through the job bridge scheme, and we've actually given them jobs as a result. So it's really, really positive. And I got a direct message on Twitter by someone saying, there's a few people online saying fairly crappy things about you. I go, okay, whatever. So I says, would you mind telling me who it is? He says, yeah, and he just gave me the names and he asked me. And what I found was that there was a really, really trusted, high-profile online company in Cork putting posts out about Fusion, hashtag cheapskates. Just giving out, saying, what in the name of God is going on when, you know, the responsible teachers, the leaders, you know, in this area are actually saying really, really crappy stuff to each other. So my kind of big challenge is that, we need to remember the positive things. We need to remember that there's people at the other end of our computers. Just because we're online doesn't matter. If someone connects with, like when I teach in my courses, and I'm trying to get people to kind of maximize the potential of stuff, and a lot of that isn't about technicalities or really, really complicated stuff. When someone connects with you on LinkedIn, you do something really simple. You send back a response saying, thanks for connecting. How are things with you? Instead of just, I'm just connected with no one. So my big thing is teach, don't preach, but maybe first of all we need to teach ourselves. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thank you, Greg. There's been a real theme, I think, throughout the night with a lot of our speakers, and I think one of the points that Andrew O'Donoghue made was really important. That is that we really do need kind of a digital civics to be taught. I think that was a point that Greg came across. Whereas at the moment we're currently probably more connected in one sense, we're also more isolated. So I think that kind of brings us on nicely to our next speaker tonight, who is Patricia Behan of Suicide Aware.
She got a call, so apologies there. Yeah, she did that. She just went over about 20 minutes ago. Quick. Apologies.
Oh, apologies. Patricia had to actually go.
Yeah.
So, okay. I guess then... Yeah, well, I'll actually bring you on to Michael Harrington, who will just take this session.
Thanks. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. I suppose to grasp what's going on here tonight, it's hard when we're in one room. I think it's 124 countries right now doing the same thing, trying to figure out how can we use new technology, being everything around us, to do good socially. I think we have massive issues socially. I think that's as a planet. That's if you think globally. What do we have locally as issues? I think that's where we are. That's what we can fix. Right. There's a lot of good things going on. I see just myself when you go out in the street, you got Cork culture. Taking photographs, goes, man, that's brilliant. You're out there for a night, you got this going on, you got this going on. I'm meeting people they don't even know this is existing, and this is people in Blackpool. They'd love to be there. That's good. So you got that going on. You got other. So how much does this actually change culture for the weekend? What actually happens? How much is made better? So now, let's take and photograph all that. Someone else doing something massive never gets photographed, so they can learn from what we're doing. That's what social media. I'm trying to say, everything we do, if you can put it up with a hashtag and put it up online, sensibly, of course. I'm trying to get a good grasp and trying to understand what's going on tonight right now, because I'm looking at tweets that are 200 a minute coming in, and that's kind of a global effort, and people are trying to say, how can I get people to understand what's going on? For the first time we can speak to the likes of the UN are actually going to listen to what we as a community have to say. So how do we get people, because I think more of a number should actually grasp what's going on. Try to give a look at, we have presidents in America now trying to say, right, hashtag 2030 now, we have this big problem, here's a solution. And they're going to come up and follow this from now going forward for 17 more years, 2030 now. So this is the time we've got to do it. Sorry, I'm going to stick with this. That's the time we've got to do it. So I'm saying 17 years, give me something that technology and social media and all the new stuff and innovation cannot do. Make it easy, make it real easy, because we can print a kidney. It's in a person 10 years ago, he's walking around. That's achievable. We can fly to the moon. So give me something technology and social media cannot do. And then think of all the good things it can do. We can talk to 9 people at once for free with a Gmail. 9 for mates, 9 for teachers, 9 people around the world. 124 countries communicating at once to solve the world's issues. If you do check the hashtag 2030 now and actually give some time into actually what is going on around the world, that the EU are saying, right, for the first time we're taking what social media is doing. We want to know your opinions. We want to know every single person on the planet. Tell us the problems and we will align everything with technology, social media. And I think a lot of it is we have created technology to align with us. It isn't working out that way. Not everywhere, not for everyone. It's working out for some are doing very well off it, and that's a good thing because that's what it's about. They're making use of technology. But some are actually they're being consumed by, and I think Facebook is probably one very good reason that Greg is here, that you're either consumed or you're a consumer of it. And I think one of the smartest things that I think that's guided me on this path of social media, because you can get consumed, it takes you tonight, is that use them for tools. Social media is a tool for learning. It's got very little to do with sales and marketing. I know it's a good space, but if you think of it as that is sales and marketing, all of this is learning. You can genuinely say, what do I want? You got to say, right, pick a question. Pick it out of space. How many miles, or no, how many shops in the world? Google will go 2 million answers in a minute, or 2 million answers in 1.6 seconds. Give me something that technology, science and innovation cannot do, and I'll be amazed. Do you know, because we can go to space. So let's try and get up in the morning and think, right, we've got 17 years. We've got unemployment is just, like 50 jobs in Dublin, 5,000 people turn up. That was a tweet there earlier. I'm free flowing it because, I think it's probably the best way. I don't think there's anything that we cannot achieve as a people, just to collaborate, get a look at what's going on online with over the 3 days, and they're going to backdate it and they're going to go filter it all through. Get up there and start thinking. How can we help a community of people that, a lot of people have never even a Gmail, they're blind to it, never heard of it, don't know what it is. Google, it's Google search, that's it. Have no idea of the drive, have no idea that you can talk to 9 people for free. You can talk to 9 of your friends, just give them a text and you're on, A lot of the states caught onto it, they're doing very well from it. I think Dublin is doing very well. If you actually do some analytics and see how well Gmail is, and all of the IT space, filter it back down to communities. I know you've got your sectors and they're doing very well, but take what we've learned as people in the IT and start teaching the very simple basics to people. If you taught someone, that's 80 years old that can't afford to get to the shops, they'd say, get a laptop, they'd laugh at you. They really would, and I can understand why. Or get even a phone and say, an iPhone, they'd say no way. But if you showed them that they could talk to their nephews, that they could talk to their aunts, they can watch the mass on a Sunday morning because they can't go because it's, no way, the weather is dreadful. That's the power of social media. Innovation, I think it's all there. If you could print a kidney 10 years ago and it's on TED Talks, give a look, it's massive science. That man is walking around because of it, and I'm watching it. I think we could all come up with amazing technology, and if you're in that space, you'd see amazing things happening. But now we're given the challenge of #2030 now. What can we do for our own communities? I think definitely, students in colleges, collaborate more and try to be less consumed. Tools for learning is one of the main points I would definitely say. So learn as much about your community, people that know very little, because we're very lucky, and I think a few people have said we're very lucky to be in the space of learning with social media. Innovation and technology, it's phenomenal if you combine them together. Give me one thing that they couldn't possibly do, and you'll be doing very well. So listen, #2030 now, look it up afterwards and you'll see the massive conversation we're involved in right now. And thank you for all for turning up. All right.